Welcome back, everybody. We are back with Inside the Burrow Battle of the Owls edition. Robbie Lastella, Kevin Fielder, joined by our special guest this week, Matthew Bartlett from the Roost, the premium rice outlet. Matthew, thanks for joining us. How's it going?
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me.
So, Kevin mentioned it. The Roost kind of corners the market, I heard up there. Tell us a little bit about the Roost and yourself. How'd you get into covering the Owls?
Local Houstonian, been around the program adjacently for some time. I guess we're going to, let's be the 8th football season. They all run together. But it's been an adventure. There's always something going on around South Maine, that's for sure.
How I feel like is Rice kind of trying to battle for fans a little bit in that major market. That's an issue that FAU runs into as well. We're kind of like right in the middle of a bunch of different teams here in South Florida. Is that a common issue?
Well, I think it's almost kind of it's a different sphere, right? Like, and I'm sure FAU gets this as well. Like, there are going to be FAU fans that are also going to probably root for Miami on or against Miami on the same weekend, or they'll cheer for the Dolphins on Sundays and they'll yell, "Hey, FAU is my Saturday team," and that's cool. So I think at some point, Houston is just not a college football town. It doesn't matter. Like, I think there's 6 or 7 college football programs like within 30 minutes of the city. It's not a college football city. So it is what it is. There's a bunch of fans of all of the teams, but I don't really think there's that much of a competition in that way.
Gotcha. I was just curious, but diving into the game itself, Scott Abel has injected a bit of life here into Rice football. It's been an exciting start to the season, at least from my vantage point. What's been the start to the year like from your seat in the press box? And is there a new form of excitement now?
Well, I mean, there's new excitement when you hire a new head coach, right? That's kind of part of his job is to bring the juice. But Rice started 3-1 for the first time since 2001. And the whole concept of, okay, let's install an option offense was like, yeah, by year 3, like this will be working and they'll have the pieces. So nobody was expecting this year to be a year where kind of everything clicked. And so far, it's looked really good. So everybody is pretty happy. Things are ahead of schedule. And right now, the Abel hire is looking like a home run.
Matt, I know when we had spoke during the offseason, you had mentioned, and I guess we both had sort of reservations about how quickly it would work at Rice with, switch to a new offense, as you mentioned, right? And all those factors kind of compounding. Have the expectations changed this year? Is it now like when you start 3-1, are Rice fans talking bowl game, or are they still a little hesitant to go that far into it, knowing sort of what lies ahead in the American Conference?
So I think it's tricky, and I think all of the risk is to the upside, right? Like if Rice doesn't go bowling and you finish, 2 or 3 games below 500 for the back half of the season and you just miss out, I don't think anybody collectively views this season as a failure, because Rice had one of the lowest over-unders like in America. They were projected to win 3.5 games by Vegas, and they're at 3 now, and the calendar just got to October. So I think you've got some of it in the bag, but I think what's interesting and what really has driven Rice to the win so far is their defense is, and we talked about this when you came on the Roost Pod, Kevin, earlier this summer. Rice had one of the best defense in the conference, and there's not a lot of good defensive football right now being played in the American. So the fact that Rice has a upper tier defense, if the offense can just like piece it together, then that just naturally elevates where we think this team should be able to go.
And I know on the sort of the flip side, on the offensive side of the ball, there was the giant question mark about who would start at quarterback. And I think that's now becoming a common theme in the American of just random quarterback battles that make no sense. But to some degree, right, Chase Jenkins has taken this job by the horns, right? And I from what I've watched, has looked solid. What has he done well? Because I know that running an offense like this is difficult, but he seems to have a really good understanding of how to read the keys and not create a bunch of turnovers in the run game, in the option game, which can can kill an option team like Rice.
Yeah, through 4 games, Rice has put the ball on the ground with the option once. And if you would have given me any sort of projection for that first year, I would have said that's happening once or twice a game, not once in 5 games now. So yeah, I think for the most part, what's been most exciting with him is just seeing the confidence, because he has the tools, right? Like we've seen him as a running threat, already has, I think, 2 rushing touchdowns on the year, maybe 3. Right up there with the team lead. And so his ability as a runner was never in question. It's knowing, when do I keep it, when do I pitch it, and how to make those reads. It's been interesting to watch over time, because we've seen, like, he looks so much more confident against Navy in game 5 than he did in game 2. And in a scheme like this, where that half-second stutter between holding that ball that extra second frees up a running lane. So, like, you have to be very exacting, and he's not there yet, but he's made a lot of progress.
You brought up the defensive side of the ball, and it seemed like you guys have a pair of edge rushers who have been dominating so far. Would you say that's been the strength of the defense and what's kind of allowed it to be successful?
Well, what's been most impressive about the defensive line is that they really were able to add complementary pieces in the portal that have made the rest of the unit really be cohesive. They rotate 7, 8, 9 guys up front. They're really committed to that. So the fact that they were able to go plug in 3 guys that they can actually rely on, like Tony Anianu, I think has 3 sacks already this year, and he's a part-time player. Like, he's not a guy that's on the field for 60 snaps, but he's really made his impact when they've been able to put him in there. So I think the D-line has really been big. I think the secret sauce, though, that has made this defense continue to click is Rice got 2 corners in the portal that have been great. Kerry Crump from Houston Christian, from Michigan State before that, leads the American and pass breakups, which is no small fact, and they've already played an option team, so like they haven't had the greatest passing volume against them so far. And then Omari Porter from Stanford has kind of settled in, and so in this defense, like, Rice likes to put those guys on islands and let everybody else do their job, and if one of those guys can't hold his own, it doesn't work. And so the fact that they've got not 1 but 2 corners out of the portal, starting caliber, which is really hard to do, and they've hit, has been massive.
I found it sort of difficult to judge what Rice is this year, because their 2 losses is to Navy, who, as you mentioned, is a traditional option team, an arguable favorite to win the American this year with how much they returned from last year, and then a loss to Houston. And as big believers,
those are undefeated teams, by the way.
Yeah,
neither of those teams has lost the game.
Undefeated Houston, which is not something I was prepared for regardless, but like, it's a power 4 team against a group of 5 team, and to some degree, right, their other 3 games, the FCS game against Prairie View A&M, Charlotte, and Louisiana, are not top teams. Louisiana is a solid team. Charlotte's bad. Like, I think we can just be honest about what Charlotte is.
Real bad.
But
just real
just
bad.
awful. But what has been the thing that has allowed them to win those games? And outside of, I guess, maybe the talent gap in some of these cases, but is there something they can do that makes them so effective to win those games against, opponents that may be on the same level in the case like Louisiana and to some degree Charlotte?
They've largely not beaten themselves. There's been some penalty issues, but they have not put the ball on the ground. They have not thrown interceptions, and the defense has been that good. I mean, you look, the Houston game, the final score was one-sided, but Rice had one of their starting corners go out in late second half and had a bomb touchdown against the backup, and Dean Connors broke off 2 long touchdown runs again in the 4th quarter late, where that game was a 1-score game at the beginning of the 4th quarter. And this has just been a team that the Navy game, the fact that game, like, they were an onside kick away, I get it, low probability, but like the fact that was a contest, like, is so far ahead of where they were supposed to be. So the fact that, like, if Rice's offense can generate like 3 touchdowns, they can reasonably expect to win most of the games they play this season. Like, you're not supposed to be able to win 6 or 7 games scoring 20 points in modern college football. Like, that's not how it works. But the offense possessing the ball, they had an 18-play drive against Navy, minimizing possessions with a defense that makes you pay when you don't score. Those two things in tandem, I think, really have had maybe a bigger effect on their games than we might have initially thought.
I think a lot of fans, maybe when they think of the option, they're going to think of, only running the ball. But I noticed last game and a couple times this season, Jenkins has gone over 20 pass attempts. How big is the passing side of this offense? And against an FAU team which has struggled, reading its keys and filling gaps, could they potentially catch him, slipping over the air a little bit and Jenkins find some success in the passing game?
It's definitely a component. What I think is most interesting, Abel said when he got here that his offense has kind of evolved every step of the way from his different stops through high school, through his college programs, and that he knew the Rice version of this offense would have a couple more wrinkles. Against Louisiana, they threw 2 balls beyond the line of scrimmage. 4 balls beyond the line of scrimmage, completed 2 of those passes. So we go from that in week 1 to week 5, where he's taking some deep shots. He's throwing downfield, and they're scheming things up to do that. So I think you're still looking at an offense that I think he's completed somewhere in the ballpark of 10-ish passes a game. Half of those have been quick hitters and screen passes that have kind of operated as an extension of the running game. So you're not going to see a lot of downfield passing, but it has a very, service academy vibe where you look at Army and you look at Navy, and they've completed 5 passes down the field for 100 yards because they caught you sleeping and they hit you over the top. So I think this offense has a lot of those pieces. One of the biggest factors we hadn't talked about yet, Braylon Walker missed the first 4 games of the season, and he was their top receiver. So they got him against Navy, and he promptly got involved and led the team in receptions and yards. So I think having him back also is part of that calculus that will allow them to stretch the field a little bit more.
Matt, I know this isn't a traditional option offense, but is the key for an opposing defense largely similar, where if you take away first down, you get them to second and long, third and long, they struggle to create explosive plays, they struggle to stay on track? Or has this been a little bit different for Rice, where if they get to third and longs, they can still find ways to continue drives and keep the game going at the sort of pace that they want it to go at?
I think for the most part, that's been true, that they've struggled. Like, you get to third and long and it's just kind of like, okay. I think that as they've gotten, progressed through the season and they've gotten some of those playmakers back on the outside that they can trust, they've gotten better at third and long. And that, week 2 and 3, I was just like, okay, if it's 3rd and 10, like, they're not even going to try to throw past the sticks. And they've had like 9-yard runs on 3rd and 7 because that's what this offense is. So, but yeah, they've been able to take advantage of it a little bit better. I think really getting more effective early. What's so interesting about this offense is Abel's kind of said that you can't take everything away. Like, if you're going to take away, the pure triple, we can go alternate. We can do inside zone. We can go to speed option. We can try these different things that, depending on how the defense wants to key, they can make some adjustments. So really what I've seen throughout all of these games is in the first half, it's taken them a while to figure out, okay, what is the defense giving us? And then once they figured out, you look at that in the second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, they're the worst scoring team in the first quarter in the American. And then the second 3 quarters, they've been really, really pretty. So I think that's been the bigger thing, is figuring out what buttons to press. And once they figure those out, it's been a lot better. It's been a lot more of that than figuring out, okay, just avoid third and long, which every offense would tell you to do.
That could potentially, that statistic about you guys finishing strong over those final 3 quarters, that could prove interesting because FAU, outside of the first quarter in each of their 3 losses this year, they have had a bad quarter. Second quarter against Maryland, they lost 25-0. I forgot how bad it was against FIU, and then they lost the fourth quarter against Memphis 31-7. All 3 of those quarters ultimately cost them the game. So that's something to note. Diving into this matchup, though, specifically, in FAU's last game, the offense on the offensive side of the ball, the passing game bounced back for the most part, but the big issue which left the offense struggling at times was their lack of run game, and potentially without RB1 Jamari Sands in this game, it could be an issue again. How has Rice's run defense been so far this season?
I think for the it's been pretty solid. If there was one thing about this defense that concerns me, is really their consistency on third down, and particularly it's been through the air. They've been pretty solid on the passing game. I think they have 2 of the best, I don't know, make you to be angry, 5 or 6 linebackers like in the American. Like Ty Morris and Andrew Alway are incredible. They've both posted, I think they're each averaging something like 8.5, 9 tackles a game. They've just been coming out of just crazy places to go make tackles. So I think run defense with those 2 in the middle and their line has been pretty solid. That's not I wouldn't be my biggest concern for Rice this weekend. It would definitely be those passing situations through the air.
So that would be your biggest concern. You mentioned, obviously, FAU runs the high-tempo offense, not a lot of huddle. How do you think the defense will be able to respond to that?
I don't know if they've had, trying to think through, not a ton of teams have really gone up tempo against the Owls this year. We have seen, so defensive coordinator John Kay has been on staff last couple of years as the linebackers coach. Defensive coordinator Brian Smith goes to Temple this offseason. So the scheme is different, but they've kept a lot of the same core tenets in place. So there's some similarities to how things have been the last several seasons. And I think tempo has been something that largely they've been all right against. It hasn't been a huge, week that has allowed opposing offenses to get down the field. And I think it's something that they'll be pretty aware of when they practice this week. You mentioned like the teams that tend to operate like this, it's not just they pull it out like, aha, surprise. It's kind of their MO. So I think that they'll be able to be ready. I think the biggest thing will be for them, they're not going to substitute a ton in the secondary or at linebacker. It's going to be rotating that D line. And I think they're going to be just fine. Like we've seen, there were series last week against Navy where it's a 1-score game in the second half, and it's just the second team defensive line and some third teamers just out there, just in live, the stuff that I typically haven't seen before. And they held their own and they played well. So I don't really think that there's something where they're really going to get caught too off guard. It's really just going to be stopping it because, Velkamp, as y'all have seen, can be pretty precise at times in some of those situations.
On flipping over to the defensive side of the ball, FAU has had some struggles in the run game recently, and obviously the option is completely different than what FAU has faced. But what do you think the strength for Rice is going to be in this game against FAU defensively?
I don't think
for Rice.
Yeah, I don't think anything too fancy. I think you're just looking at Rice will line up and just run right at him. I think that they've had some success with those triple concepts, but I think you're just going to get a lot of Quentin Jackson and a lot of Dalen Alexander. And one of the things that has been really refreshing about Abel so far in this coaching staff, something that's really frustrating to watch as a spectator with some coaches sometimes, is they find a player, a concept that works, and they run it like 3 times in a game. And you're like, what do you call the same play? Like it worked. And what Abel's been really committed at so far is he will run it until you stop it. And there's been games where I've just watching, I'm counting from the press box 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm like, they just ran that play 3 times on one drive where there was 7 plays. There's like, well, that's what it's going to be. So against FAU, especially the caliber of run defense that they've put on tape so far this year, I don't really think they're going to have to get fancy. They're going to challenge FAU. Here's what we're going to do. Stop us.
People used to get mad at me when I played Madden for running the same play. See, there's logic. It works.
We'll see, Robbie. I think you probably just ran Hail Mary 10 times, and that's
no.
still
See, I love inside zone. I'm a big inside zone guy. But looking in terms of players for you, Matt, who's X factor wise? You mentioned returning wide receiver who played a role against Navy, but a couple of guys on the offensive side of the ball, a couple of guys on the defensive side of the ball. Who are your X factors?
I think it's going to be pretty tight. I would say the other pass catching option, and Rice does use him a lot as an extension of the running game. I'd say Aaron Turner and Drayden Dickman are the two other guys to know there. They will do a lot of reverses, sweeps, pitches where those, receivers, quote unquote, listed on the depth chart are going to become runners in that system. So those two other guys, names to know, I think on offense, obviously Chase Jenkins at quarterback is going to be running the show. We've seen what's been interesting with him is he's had his 100-yard rushing games, and then he's had games where he just doesn't run at all because it's either the slots or the backs that have done the most of it. So I think who gets the yardage is kind of going to be dictated again by what FAU chooses to stop, but he's going to be the one driving the bus for sure.
We don't usually do predictions on this show, and so we're not gonna change that. But in terms of what does Rice need to do to win this game, and what can happen if what will cause them to lose this game?
So the two big things, the themes that kind of emerged so far for Rice this season is they've started really slow. The offense has taken some time to get going, and the defense has really struggled to get off the field on third down. After this weekend, I think they were bottom 15 in the country in third down defense, which is just bizarre considering they're like top half in every other defensive statistic and, one of the better defenses in the American. So the fact that is a problem has just been weird. So the thing that really is going to set the tone for Rice that I think we haven't seen the fully fledged version of this team is can Rice lead? Like the fact that they've been able to win 3 games with other than Charlotte, largely negative game scripts where things have not been exactly how they wanted, is not how option offenses are supposed to work. So we really haven't seen, other than Prairie View, where they just came out okay, we're in control and they get to set the tone. I think that's what, if Rice can do that and take the lead early and really choke out the FAU offense, the best way to prevent FAU from scoring is to keep them off the field and limit their opportunities. I really do believe that's what Rice wants to do. So I think starting fast is really going to be particularly important for this team, because you steal 1 or 2 possessions on defense and there's only 7 or 8, it gets really hard to win.
Kevin, from an FAU perspective, what does FAU need to do in this game, and what can't they do?
Well, they can't turn the ball over, which has been an issue in all 4 games this year. And again, right, when you play a team like Rice who can just sort of grind it out, turn this game into 4 possessions effectively for FAU, you can't turn the ball over. You can't be wasting possessions, right? Every possession is going to matter in this game way more than it did against Memphis, way more than it did against, Florida A&M, even FIU, right? You're going to have to find ways to steal possessions. You're going to have to find ways to get Rice off the field. But I think the biggest thing is similarly to Rice, where Rice hasn't shot themselves in the foot and made it more difficult for them. FAU can't make it more difficult than it already is. It feels like every game they play, they have some backbreaking mistake that is incredibly difficult to recover from because it happens at the wrong time. And I'm telling you, right, Rice, while they may have some talent, gaps, or they may not be the most talented offense in the country, they're going to take advantage of mistakes. That's what they're designed to do. And so FAU can't go, turn the ball over twice in the second half and then expect to win the game. They can't come out flat in the second half and expect to win the game. And also, right, they have to find a way to steal at least a possession from Rice, whether that's a turnover, a punt with a good return, something where they can steal field position, because the longer this game goes, this is like playing Army last year for FAU. The longer this game goes, the worse FAU is going to be for Ware, because they're going to have to figure out ways to win the game. And you don't want to be playing from behind against Rice, because they're just going to run the ball 3 times. You know what? They're going to waste the entirety of the clock, and you're going to be wondering where all your possessions went. And so, right, like the biggest thing for me is just don't find ways to compound mistakes. Don't find ways to turn one mistake into 3 to 4 mistakes, because Rice, this is not Mike Bloomgren's 3 yards in a cloud of dust Rice. This is probably more like 4 yards in a cloud of dust. But still, that's 4 yards that is going to be incredibly difficult to play against, because they're going to steal possessions. They're going to find ways to grind this game out. And you may only have 1 or 2 possessions in the second half if this game goes the way Rice wants it to.
3 yards doesn't get you first down, 4 does, and then you keep going and chew the clock out. So
I know that.
That'll get the job done. Yeah, I agree with what you said there, Kevin. I think FAU is going to have to match that performance from Memphis in terms of not turning it over. But they made the adjustments to rush the passer against Memphis after no pass rush against FIU, which was nice. But they had no run defense. So I'm going to be interested to see if they can dial up those adjustments in a couple of days. I can't say I'm optimistic. I'm not. It's not impossible, but it's definitely going to require some buy-in and some effort there from that front seven. So we'll see if they can spin things around here quickly and figure it out in the run defense department. If they can do that, I think we'll have a good game on our hands. I think this will be a good game if FAU can prevent Rice from controlling the clock. If Rice controls the clock, could get ugly, and if they compound that with turnovers. So we'll see. 7 p.m. from one of the most historical stadiums in the conference, Rice versus FAU, Battle of the Owls. Matt, thanks for taking some time to join us here today. We'll have this live in a couple of days, maybe even tomorrow. Thank you again. We appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Pat.
For Kevin Fielder, for Matt Bartlett from the Roost, I'm Robbie Lastella. We will see you guys next week. We'll see what kind of mood we're in.